Hey, I'm Jay Arlay. Welcome back to another episode of the Level Up Business Podcast. In this episode, we're going to look into some of the mindsets. We're going to explore some of the mindsets and the habits that can set you up for success as an entrepreneur. But before we do that, I want to invite you to get my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the Entrepreneur's Guide to Achieving Exponential Growth in the Age of AI. Text me now, 832-240-1922, and I will text you a copy so that you can level up your mind, level up your marketing, and level up your sales so that ultimately you can level up your business and your life. Joining me for today's conversation is Natasha Schiffman. Natasha's been on an entrepreneurial journey herself. She was in teaching, and now she's an entrepreneur working with other entrepreneurs as well, sharing her unique wisdom in a variety of ways, including in her business, Integrator Habit, as well as working together with her husband in their HOA management firm. Natasha has also been helping entrepreneurs, including myself, in Platinum Elevated, helping entrepreneurs unlock and achieve breakthroughs through weekly accountability and coaching sessions, which I am so grateful for. Natasha, welcome to the show. It is good to share time today.
Oh, I love it. Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to roll the clock back a little bit
Okay.
because you were a teacher. How do you go from the world of teaching into the world of what you're doing now with entrepreneurship and the work you're doing specifically around habits and mindsets? Because it's all an intersection.
Yeah, yes. When I was in college, I studied psychology and I loved it. Wanted to actually take it another level, but realized that I needed to get, master's or PhD in order to do anything with a psychology degree. So I minored in social studies and I was able to teach middle school and high school for 10 years. And I loved it. It really helped me grow and learn and how to break down big concepts into small pieces. And I love the psychology in history, like why people do what they do, kind of understanding the times and the fears and the concerns and, why people did things that were less than pleasant, right? Or even downright awful. And to where, there's amazing heroes in history and what they're made of and what they did and their background. So I love that history brought forward some of my psychology favorites. And then I decided to pivot. I wanted to work from home. I had a growing family and trying to find something that worked better for like a home life balance and whatnot, and not so scripted to the, kind of 9 to 5. And so I actually had an opportunity to work for Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he had a great coaching program that I was able to step into and be his head coach for a couple of years, and I learned so much about future self and psychology and how there were different certifications that went with that time with him. And one of them was Tiny Habits with BJ Fogg. And when I thought of a habit, I always thought of physical habit, right? Like putting away your shoes or making your bed or things like that. In my mind, I had never thought of mindset habits. Like when this happens, think this way. And so that was an unlock for me, is to realize, hey, I can have some cues that are in the physical world to remind me to do something mentally that's super helpful. And it really helped me in coaching entrepreneurs as well as moms and my own kids. Like coaching goes everywhere. And there's a lot of bleed through in the teaching world. Like I learned some of those concepts and ways to break down things into manageable steps, right? Scaffolding with students. You can do the same thing with coaching. And so that has been a huge part of my journey, is taking some of that teaching and psychology and moving it forward to my own family life and then helping entrepreneurs as well. And now my husband launching his business this year, I get to take all the things I learned and really apply it to our like family business moving forward. So we're really excited what this year's unlocking for our family.
There's that word, it's unlocking, and I want to unlock some additional perspective here based upon what you've seen through your work,
Mhm.
particularly on the coaching side of coaching entrepreneurs around, we'll just say, mindset beliefs, habits. What
Right.
what do you find are the biggest, we'll call them self-limiting beliefs that hold an entrepreneur back from elevating and leveling up their business, leveling up their life for that matter?
Yeah, it's interesting that, I mean, our childhood definitely fascinates me because there's stories. Our brain is so powerful and tells a lot of stories. And some of that will carry on into, current life and what's going on there. I had an entrepreneur that I had the privilege of coaching who had quite a successful background, and yet he just had this scarcity mindset. And he shared a story with me that was really personal and powerful. He said that when he was growing up, his mom would always give him half a piece of gum. Like with him and his siblings, it would, instead of getting a whole piece of gum, he would get half a piece of gum and share it with his siblings and whatnot. And one time he was with a family friend, and their mom gave them a whole piece of gum. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, we must be poor. I never get a full piece of gum." And this was a story that he told himself when he was younger and carried through, that like, I don't have enough resources. I am poor. I don't know how to handle this, right? And so it carried forward into his business. And you would think that's like, okay, a piece of gum, how does that relate to my business? But it's interesting that those stories carry through. And so when we were able to kind of like shine a light on it and talk about how there's an opportunity here. Could you reframe the story? Because I'm a busy mom and I know that my kids waste things that I give them. And gum, how about the story is instead, my mom was smart with her resources and didn't waste. And you are smart with your resources and you're strategic and you use your resources in a way that's going to bring you forward instead of just wasting things. And so we were able to kind of shift that and start thinking about how he is strategic with his resources instead of poor from his childhood kind of story.
That's super interesting, and I wanna roll back on this because I think it's these stories
Hmm.
that we tell ourselves because you're literally telling the story, and I'm thinking, because once again, you and I have spent a lot of time together, one-on-ones. I've shared a lot of things with you, over the years, and I'm like, "Did I tell her this?"
No.
Uh, I don't think so, but I'm saying that because you just brought something back because I've struggled with this scarcity mindset myself,
Mhm.
and literally that was my experience too growing up. My mom would give us a piece, a stick of gum, and then you couple that with another
Mhm.
data point, which was something I always heard growing up is, "We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't
Yeah.
afford it. We can't afford it." And it creates this like program loop, and you begin to look at the world through that lens of scarcity. At the same time though, I think it was that really, I don't know if it was, if the entrepreneurial mind, and maybe you have some perspective on this, if that's a built-in, is that nurture, is that nature, but that story about the gum, I'm
Mhm.
like, that was me. That was my life growing up too.
Mhm.
And how I've had to struggle and overcome, and I'm still working, and you and I are having conversations about this, like the scarcity versus abundance. And it's just a matter of perspective. And it's telling ourselves, giving, I think, the permission, and you've done such a great job of creating the space to begin to tell a new story, to write a new story for that matter. So what are you seeing when it comes to the entrepreneurial mind? Because it's a different mind. It just views the world very differently. And I think it was maybe even some of the work that Gino Wickman was doing, that what is it, like 4% of the world has an entrepreneurial mind. I can't think of the quote off the top of my head, but it's a
Mhm.
smaller percentage, I believe.
Yeah,
And
I don't remember the exact statistic there, but I do know that it requires kind of a unique skill set and background and whatnot to have that entrepreneurship mindset. What I found is it goes to kind of this value creation instead of just being part of the cogs of the wheel, kind of thing, or of the system. And so it's the idea of see a need and fill a need and willingness to take risk, right?
Mhm.
That's a huge part of this. And so there's a lot of mindset up leveling that has to happen for your next stage of your business, because otherwise those stories that we talked about earlier kind of hold us back, and is the reason why we're not taking leaps forward. So if ever we're hesitating, so this goes back to some of the tiny habits that I've noticed, is if I'm hesitating or not making a bold move that I know I'm capable of and should, what's the story I'm telling myself? What's the history here? What layers can you unpack, right?
Mhm.
So I like kind of untangling that and then getting at the root, and then we can jump forward into, okay, what is now in alignment with this new story that's more helpful. I could share like a personal example too, is
Please.
yeah, growing up, I loved basketball. I loved it so much. And what happened is I made my junior high team, and the coach sat us all down and said, "Hey, so you really have to put basketball in front of everything else, including your family." And I was so bothered by that. I had never been on like a competitive team like that. And I decided to quit. I quit basketball. And I regretted it later. And I kept blaming my mom for this and saying in my head that my mom was the reason that I had quit basketball. And it was a wedge in my relationship with her, and she didn't even know I blamed her. And she actually, I remember the situation when I came home and I said, I'm going to actually quit the basketball team. And I said, they want me to put basketball in front of family and everything. Like, it has to be the most important thing. And she's like, are you sure? You don't have to. You can still do basketball. You love it. And I said, no, I'm not going to. And that story, like, because I was ashamed that I had done that thing, like I had quit, I blamed my mom and it created that wedge. And so when I was able to go back in time and unpack that story, I realized I wasn't telling the full truth to myself. And I need to tell a more helpful story forward. I actually prioritize family above all else. And that's a good thing. And that's a strong thing. My mom had nothing to do with it. It was my choice, my inner compass, and what matters to me and my values. Right.
Right.
And so a lot of times with entrepreneurs, there's like blocks in our stories and our history, and maybe some goal conflict. I've noticed that
Mm.
that happens a lot. Is that as we're pushing forward, what are at odds or seemingly at odds with each other instead of in harmony with each other. And so that's been a really helpful tool, is to hear the stories and find that inner compass moment of, this is actually what I value, this is actually what I care about, and this is how I'm going to show up in the world, and this is the helpful story that's going to keep me moving forward. That's not a lie, right? It's a reframing that's powerful. So those are some of the mindset tools that have been helpful.
I really appreciate that perspective and that story because it's something that I think we all can relate to. It's like we have an experience and then we attach some emotion or meaning and that creates a block. Let's talk about unblocking the blocks,
Yeah.
and letting go and releasing. And before we do that, I want to loop back around to the percentage of what we would say is the entrepreneurial mind. I was
Yeah.
looking this up here, some global entrepreneurial stats. Um, in 2020, there globally were around 582 million entrepreneurs. 2023, there's an increase to 594 million entrepreneurs in the world, which is around 7.4% of the entire global population. And I think you're right in regards to mind and mindset and even belief. It's value creation. It's looking for opportunities to create value for others. But then what gets in the way, the blocks, the beliefs of past experiences, If you want to level up your business like Natasha and I have been talking about, send me a text and I'll send you a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change. It is the entrepreneur's guide to achieving exponential growth in the age of AI. When I look back over the last two decades as a B2B entrepreneur myself, so much has changed. I have changed. You have probably changed. And as we continue to move forward into the age of AI, so much is going to continue to change at a rate that is very hard to perceive, especially when it comes to marketing and sales strategies for B2B entrepreneurs. So send me a text right now, 832-240-1922, and I'm going to text you a copy of my best-selling book, Banking on Change, so that you can level up your business and your life. Let's get back to the conversation with Natasha. How do you help entrepreneurs eliminate those blocks, release the beliefs that no longer serve them so that they can continue to move forward and level up?
Yeah, I think we talked about at the very beginning kind of that weekly rhythm of accountability
Yeah.
actually shines a light on where we're not acting in alignment with our beliefs and what we actually care about and want. It's
Why
great to have.
weekly? I want to pause on that. Why
Yeah.
weekly? Because I have
Hmm.
been, I've had have had some sort of entrepreneurial support system at this point for about 15 years. And it took a dark night of the soul moment, and my wife, who you have also coached as well, um, her saying it's the business or the family. So it took an immense amount of pain for me to finally go out and get some help. And that was in a variety of ways, personally, with some personal, we'll call it therapy, counseling. We did some marriage therapy. We're still doing marriage therapy, marriage counseling. Then there's the entrepreneurial side. But why weekly? Because for me, that's been a huge game changer as just a personal anecdote. But you're looking at this from a different perspective than even I am. Why
Yeah.
weekly?
I love it. I've partnered with Chad Willardson with Platinum Elevated, and it's really changed the trajectory for clients and coaching to have his experience. And what I love about it is we had talked about, okay, how do we want to set up this program? What's ideal for an entrepreneur? And we had played around with, well, entrepreneurs are busy, so maybe it needs to just be monthly or biweekly. And what we came up with, like, no, it needs to be weekly. And the reason is a week is an eternity in an entrepreneur's mind. So much can change. They're really good at like adapting and changing to the situation, environment, getting new information. We need to check for that alignment towards that big picture instead of getting caught in the weeds. And like everyone has that tendency of like shiny object syndrome. We got to have a filter of where we're running things through. Is this truly just something that's easier or shinier in the moment? Or is it truly in alignment and it's a great opportunity? And so that alignment check, and on the week, like a week is treated like a month, right? So much can happen when you're really acting in alignment towards that future self goal. And so that's kind of the idea around that, is just how our time is different than maybe the rest of the world.
Ooh, once again, it's a matter of perspective and how we're seeing things. And I will tell you, I've been in a variety of different programs, groups, masterminds over the years. And for me, the biggest difference with the work that you're doing and Chad is doing with Elevated is it's the accountability, because it's that ongoing accountability that is creating continuous action. There's another program that I've been involved in, and we meet on a quarterly basis, and it's great. We just do some really deep level thinking about where we've been, where we're at, where we could go next with our business. But what I was starting to find, it's like 90 days would go by, and I'd be back there thinking, well, what have I done? I had some great ideas, but I failed to execute. And I think a lot of that is knowing who I am and my Colby. Um, I'm a 3294. I'm a resistant follow through. I'm an initiating quick start. And so having to show up and literally have a conversation with you, it's like that's been a huge game changer, because I think otherwise a week, 2, 3 weeks, 90 days would go by. And it's like, I'd have these great ideas, but wouldn't take any action for them. And I want to shift the conversation here because it comes back to something that you just touched on. It's time. A lot of entrepreneurs that I know, and I was like this, they feel like they have to do more. They feel like they have to hustle harder. They feel like they have to push, force. How when you're operating like that, you're in this like reactive state.
Absolutely.
How how do you help them shift from, we'll say, reactive to responsive, from something we've talked about on another podcast with Jordan Boniface, from force to flow?
I love Jordan. You're gonna have to check out that podcast. I think something that comes up for me is I love Stephen Kotler's work, and he wrote a book called Art of Impossible, and it definitely had an impact on my coaching because a lot of times we see goals as in conflict. He's a writer and he's a skier, and
Mhm.
it would seemingly be that anytime he's writing, he's not skiing, and anytime he's skiing, he's not writing, and they're in conflict or anything like that. But actually, if you can frame things up and focus on areas in your business and in your life that bring that flow and see that they actually complement each other, then you have more of that goal harmony that is so important, for it to not feel like this constant uphill battle. And so, something that I invite um, clients to find is the mindset around, actually, when I work out, it's helping me be a better entrepreneur. Or when I do these things with my family, it actually helps me in my business experience more flow, and vice versa, right? When I actually prioritize the big frogs and make them happen, right? Eat those big, ugly frogs that are outstanding, it actually makes me experience more beautiful flow time with my family because I've done a good job and knocked out the most important work, right? And so it's getting to more of that flow and harmony, in some of our goal pursuits, that is so helpful that it doesn't have to feel like you're going upstream, right?
It's a great perspective of moving from force to flow, and how like different parts of your life, they might seem distant, but in reality they're really becoming interconnected. You mentioned Stephen Kotler. You have a lot of book references, and I think that's one of your gifts, is the ability to reference a lot of different perspectives and integrate them into an entrepreneurial's worldview. What book has had the greatest influence? I know even you mentioned Tiny Habits with BJ Fogg, but outside of the books that we've talked about, what's a book that has had the greatest influence on just your own perspective of the entrepreneurial world?
Oh, it's a tricky one. Yeah. I think I'm an Audible consumer, maxed out that way. I have 4 kids, and so the only way I'm going to get any reading in is listening. So whether it's in the car or, folding laundry or, all of those swim meets with my oldest, it's 12. Any of those, I'm always listening to books. So, I
What are you
think,
listening to right now? What's on the
yeah.
playlist?
Yeah, I mean, I do wear a lot of hats, in the sense that I really want to stretch myself as a mother and show up well there. And some of these mindsets weave into that. So I'm listening to a popular book right now, Good Inside. Becky does a great job sharing some beautiful ways to kind of reparent yourself as well as show up well in the relationships in your life.
Let's
But I
talk about
think,
that.
yeah.
Let's talk about reparenting yourself,
Mhm.
because that's something that has come up in another area of my life, working with Maureen, who's my um, therapist, counselor, and we're doing some marriage work around that too. And what does that mean? Because this literally takes our conversation now full circle of the story that you led with of another entrepreneur, who their mom would tear a piece of gum in half, and that that family of origin, that childhood experience. What does it mean to reparent yourself with what you're reading here, and how does that connect back to helping other entrepreneurs level up?
Yeah, I think it's the importance of getting over that perfectionism that I have to be a perfect parent in order to be a good or an effective parent. Really, it's all about mending and relationships, connection first. One of my favorite new tiny habits that is in the chapter that I'm reading and listening to. I just went for a walk this morning out in the snow, listening to her, and she talked about connection first and how anytime something is just not what you want, not what you're expecting, maybe very reactionary, whether it's a client or a team member or a spouse or a child, connect first with the person instead of going to that reaction mode. And as you build in that new habit and care about the person, you also kind of give yourself grace that way too. When I don't show up perfectly, connect with myself, what's going on here, I'm not at my best, how can I repair is her big word around that. And so it helps because I think when you're out on your own and it is just you as far as your business and it is all on your shoulders and there isn't someone else to kind of rely on, you can get stuck in your head around that perfectionism, imposter syndrome, all of those things. And so if you can work through some of the mental challenges of giving yourself some grace, it's okay. It doesn't need to be perfect to move forward with it. It's just a test, not be overly attached to any data information you get. That can be so helpful and actually has some roots in our childhood, where we expected to be perfect. I was the oldest of five, straight A student. There was a little bit of perfectionism in there, right? And so that's going to carry through of like, hey, your sister set a good example for you. You need to show up well. Your room needs to be just as clean and you need to get as good of grades. Like all of that of just shining a light. Some of that comes forward in my business. And so where can I say, okay, this isn't helpful. This is good enough. I have enough to move forward with, right? So in your business, in your personal life, where is perfectionism kind of creeping in? Where can you reparent and say, this is good. Like this is good enough for us to move forward.
I like that, and once again, I can connect with that because growing up, my mom was one, and this is actually and we've done a lot of work and healing together
Mhm.
to where like she if I got an A, let's say I got a 90 or 91, maybe 92, well, you could do better. And I'm like, dude, it's an A. Or if I got a B, well, you could do better. I'm like, yeah, but I really don't care. Like, I'm just not like the grade does not personally matter to me. It's just like there are other things that are more important at that point in my life. But come to find out, that was her experience. Like,
Right.
that's how her father was with her.
Right.
And so now with my kids, we're looking at things completely different to where one of our kids struggles in school. Brilliant mind. But in some of the subjects, he just doesn't care. And I'm cool with that because I see his mind, I see his gifts, and I see his talents in other areas and other ways. And he's going to go on and do some amazing things. And so we're doubling down on those areas for him. But I think that the sum of our conversation here has been reframing and telling a new story, and just looking at things and giving the permission to do so. So as we wrap up, for someone who is watching, for someone who is listening, what would be the one thing that they could do today, right now, as we wrap up, to reframe, to tell a new story so that they can continue to level up themselves, level up their business, level up their life?
I think something that's my favorite habit and my favorite centering practice that keeps me moving forward, and it may sound a little cliche, but it's the habit of gratitude. A lot of times we get stuck in our heads about how things should be or need to be. I had the opportunity to study under Linda Fogg, who runs the coaching program with BJ Fogg, and she shared something beautiful, and it's called a pearl habit. It's actually why I wear pearl earrings. It reminds me. So, pearl habit, it's when you take something irritating, something that's bothering you, and you make something beautiful out of it. So, I have a son who has a speech impediment, and he also has this love of Hot Wheel cars. And he kept putting his cars all over the house. I mean, his older brother is 12. And so in the last 12 years, we've gathered quite a few of these Hot Wheel cars, and they've been all over our house. And it used to irritate me. And I turned it into, here's a reminder of the plenty that's around me that I can tap into. It's abundance. There's a million Hot Wheel cars. There's a million of resources and people and possibilities here. And so as I was cleaning up the Hot Wheel cars in the evening with my son, we actually practiced as we're putting them away, like something that we're grateful for as we're cleaning them up. We're grateful for grandma. We're grateful for, all the beautiful things, our friends and the snow outside and our new RC car and all the things, right, as we're cleaning up. And so it's a reminder of that gratitude. And so I think something to apply forward is the things that are like irritating us and bothering us. There's a way for us to not be victim to them and find a new story around it and to trigger something new. You get to decide what that experience, whatever that is, if it's, annoying colleague or a client that keeps, showing up in a way that's not helpful or whatever it is, right? How can I reframe this and make it something like helpful and turn that irritation into something beautiful and helpful and inspiring to keep me moving forward? And so that has just made a huge impact as far as moving things forward.
I really appreciate that because it's so easy to look at the world around us and find every reason to be irritated about
Yeah.
something.
Yep.
But we can then choose, and it's a choice, to look at
Mm-hmm.
the world around us and see an abundance of pearls.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a, in the way that you have framed that and the way that you have made that idea a physical reminder through your pearl earrings, I think is such a great, simple, practical daily habit. Not that I'm going to go off and get pearl earrings myself. Let's just be very, very, but it reminds me of something that I wrote about in Banking on Change and the fact that the mind is like a movie theater. And the neat thing is that we are the director, we're the writer, we are the producer, we are behind the camera. And anytime that we want to begin to craft a new movie, tell a new story, the choice is ours. And sometimes, though, it's very challenging to do alone. And that's where accountability comes back into play. And I'm so grateful for going to end on gratitude. Natasha, I am so grateful for the accountability that you have provided me to help me reframe my own self-limiting beliefs and the things that I'm struggling with and make some pearls out of them. So thank you for that, Natasha.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been a treat to work with you.
And for those watching or listening, if they want to connect with you to continue to learn together, what's the best way for them to reach out and say hello, make a connection with you?
My personal brand is Integrator Habit. So I have LinkedIn and a website and whatnot there. Um, and you can see all the beautiful things that I'm a part of. I wear a lot of hats. I try to share the love with mom groups. I have a mom coaching group to help, and then I coach high level entrepreneurs through the Elevated program. And I also give back to my community by running a cool book group for leadership mindset for teens. I just feel like there's so much just great wisdom out there that isn't taken down into bite size and accessible to everyone. And so it is really changing one little thing daily that can make a huge compounding effect, whatever that is. So it's exciting.
Absolutely. And thank you for all the work that you've done for me and that you're doing for others. Connect with Natasha, learn with Natasha, level up and grow together with Natasha. Natasha, thanks for joining me for another episode of Level Up Business Podcast.
Thank you.
If you want to continue to level up yourself as an entrepreneur, reach out, send me a text, 832-240-1922, and I will send you a copy of my best-selling book, Banking Unchanged, so that you can level up your business and your life without sacrificing your well-being.